In 2010, on the morning of the U.S. midterm elections, millions of Americans opened Facebook. At the top of their screen was a small banner. It said, "Go vote today." Now underneath it, there were photos of friends who had already voted. No speech, no ad campaign, no political messaging, just a user interface change. Now behind the scenes, Facebook had flipped a switch, testing whether a digital nudge could change real-world behavior. Guess what? It worked. Researchers later estimated that single interface change influenced more than 300,000 additional voters. Now, no ballots were touched, no laws were broken, no votes were changed, but behavior was. And that's the moment something fundamental became clear. The power to govern no longer required reach and code. You didn't see that moment as a transfer of power. You just saw it as a notification. But there was something else going on. Let's talk about it. Hey everybody, welcome to Midweek Sitrep, your bi-weekly briefing on national security and the forces that shape it. My name is Jerry Fowler, and I'm your host. Every other week, I give you the context you need to see what's really going on so you can stay mission-focused. Today, we're looking at something most people interact with constantly, but rarely think about. The systems that decide what shows up on your feed, which options are presented to you, and which ones quietly disappear. This episode is about those systems, the algorithms, and how they've become a new kind of governance. Not by telling people what to do, but by shaping what they're allowed to choose from. Let's get into it. Let's be clear about what we're talking about. Algorithms aren't math problems. They aren't futuristic threats. They're not just tech stuff. Algorithms are decision systems. They determine what matters before anyone debates it. They shape what appears in front of you and what never does. They elevate some things, demote others, and quietly remove entire categories from view. They approve. They flag. They deny. Often without explanation. And that's the core idea here. Power now operates through systems that rank, score, and prioritize at scale. Those systems are built by companies, driven by incentives, translated into code, and expressed through models that structure choice long before action occurs. There's no commands, no force, no announcement, just prioritization. When systems shape behavior at scale, they shape stability. When they shape access and opportunity at scale, they shape outcomes. And when they shape information at scale, they shape reality. Anything that can shape reality at scale is power. Here's the reality without the hype. An algorithm is a structured way of deciding what matters. That's it. It takes inputs, applies priorities, and produces outcomes. But when those decisions operate at scale, across millions of interactions, in real time, with no meaningful friction, their role changes. They stop functioning like tools and start functioning like rules. Not formal rules, not written statutes or operational rules, but rules that determine what is visible, reachable, rewarded, or ignored. Every algorithm optimizes for something, and whatever it optimizes for shapes behavior downstream. If the system prioritizes engagement, content that provokes reaction rises. If it prioritizes efficiency, edge cases get discarded. If it prioritizes profit, attention becomes the product. If the priority is safety, access narrows. But if it's certainty, variation gets suppressed. What a model values is what a system amplifies. And that's where governance enters the picture. Not through commands, but through structure. Not through enforcement, but through prioritization. Here's the tension at the center of modern governance. Democratic systems are built around participation. Elections, debate, protest, accountability. But a growing share of the decisions that shape daily life don't pass through any of those channels. You can go vote for leaders, but you don't vote for ranking logic. You can challenge policy. You don't challenge recommendation systems. You can contest a law. You don't contest scoring models that quietly determine approval, visibility, or access. These systems don't announce authority. They don't justify outcomes. They don't explain themselves. They operate upstream of choice, structuring the environment in which decisions are made before anyone realizes a decision is happening. That's a different form of power. Not power exercised through command, but power exercised through design. Not control with fingerprints, but control through architecture. Now, it doesn't replace democratic processes. No, it shapes what people see and consider before those processes even begin. So what does this look like in real life? Let's talk through some examples to make this concrete. Let's talk about finance. How about your credit score? That's an algorithm. Your interest rate? Well, that was calculated by a model. What about whether you're labeled high risk or not? Well, that's a scoring system that you'll never see. There's no conversation, no discretion, just an output. Let's talk about jobs. Most applications never even reach a human. They're filtered by systems looking for keyword matches, employment gaps, zip codes, inferred socioeconomic signals. People don't reject you, the system does. And often, no one can explain why. What about healthcare? Well, hospitals increasingly rely on predictive models to decide who gets priority, who sees a specialist, who gets waitlisted, who's flagged as low value or low urgency. These aren't medical judgments in the traditional sense. They're optimization decisions. How about information? What about what you see online? Well, everything you see online is ranked, scored, filtered, and curated. Not to inform you, but to keep you engaged. What holds attention rises, and what doesn't fades. That becomes your reality. How about safety and policing? Now, some cities use predictive policing models where a neighborhood gets flagged. That brings more patrols, which leads to more arrests, which reinforces the data, which flags the neighborhoods again. This isn't individual judgment. It's just a feedback loop. Now, I'll note cities like Los Angeles, Chicago, and New Orleans experimented with predictive policing models and later scaled them back after internal reviews raised concerns about transparency and feedback effects. This very issue. And that's the through line here. These systems don't just assist decisions, they structure them. This isn't governance through law, it's governance through code. Let's look at a few examples that show how this operates in practice. Roughly 70% of watch time on YouTube comes from recommendations. That means most people aren't choosing what to watch. They're choosing from what the system puts in front of them. The recommendation model doesn't just reflect interest, it actively structures attention. And at scale, this means algorithms play a decisive role in shaping culture, narratives, and shared reference points. TikTok's influence isn't just about virality, It's also about velocity and reach. By adjusting weight factors, how fast content spreads, how widely it's shown, and how long it's sustained, the platform can elevate a narrative or quietly remove it from public view. No takedown, no announcement, just deprioritization. Now that's not entertainment, that's agenda-setting power. And on Amazon, the buy box determines who survives. A small change in the algorithm, and it can direct demand overnight, creating a business or wiping out one. And for thousands of sellers, Amazon's ranking logic functions as a regulator, a compliance system, and an economic gatekeeper. There's no appeal process in the traditional sense. There's only the output. That's governance with a checkout button. So we have 3 of the most used websites using algorithms to tell you what to watch, influencing culture as a whole, creating and eliminating businesses, and driving commerce. From a national security perspective, control over the information environment matters as much as control over territory. If you can shape what people see, what they pay attention to, and what they come to accept as normal, you don't need to breach networks or disable infrastructure. You influence outcomes upstream. That influence doesn't come from a single tactic. It comes from shaping systems that determine what content spreads, which narratives gain momentum, what draws attention, and what fades quietly out of view. This isn't about hacking in the traditional sense. It's about exploiting how ranking and recommendation systems already work. At that level, competition isn't just between states, it's between models, between different ways of structuring attention, visibility, and belief at scale. And the most strategically valuable terrain isn't physical space. It's the layer where information is prioritized. The first page of results, the top of the feed, the default recommendation. Modern influence doesn't seize territory. It shapes perception. This isn't about panic or prediction. It's about recognizing where decision systems already affect outcomes. If you run a business or advise one, start by identifying where algorithms meaningfully shape your exposure, whether that be search rankings, ad placement, payment processing, fraud detection, seller visibility, credit and risk scoring. If a system can limit your access to customers, capital, or platforms, and you don't understand how it evaluates you, that's a governance blind spot. You also need to pay attention to incentives. Decision systems are optimized for specific objectives, whether that be profit, risk reduction, efficiency, safety, denial. That doesn't make them malicious. It makes them predictable. Assume the system is optimized for its owner, not you, and plan accordingly. Third, build algorithm literacy where it matters. Not everyone needs to understand machine learning, but someone needs to understand how key decisions are being made, what inputs matter, and where misclassification risk exists. That's already standard practice in finance, insurance, and fraud. It's becoming standard everywhere else. Fourth, prepare for oversight. Algorithmic and AI governance expectations are evolving, and that's around documentation, explainability, auditability, and accountability. Companies that treat this as basic governance hygiene will adapt more easily than those treating it as a future problem. Finally, you need to plan for failure. Models will make mistakes. Systems will overcorrect. And for many businesses, the most serious operational risk isn't a regulator or even a competitor. It's a third-party decision system that misjudges them at scale. If you think this is just a tech story, you're wrong. It's a story about how everyday life for you gets shaped. Algorithms influence which job listings reach you, how your credit worthiness is assessed, what you pay for insurance, what news and information you encounter, who appears in your dating apps, how neighborhoods and communities are categorized, what cultural signals you're exposed to, and how the world appears to be reacting around you. Most of that influence isn't obvious. It works quietly and over time by prioritizing certain signals, amplifying some behaviors, and filtering out others. These systems shape what feels normal, popular, or widely accepted. That's where the real impact shows up. Not because algorithms dictate beliefs, but because they influence what people think everyone else is seeing, saying, or valuing. And when perception shifts at scale, behavior follows. Algorithms don't just mirror society, they participate in shaping it. Power doesn't always announce itself. Today, it operates through systems that rank, score, prioritize, and quietly decide. It's embedded in parameters, weighting factors, scoring models, ranking systems, invisible decisions, silent optimizations. These systems don't issue commands. They don't explain outcomes. They don't argue cases. They shape the environment in which choices are made long before anyone realizes a choice is happening. And once control operates at the level of design, it becomes harder to see. And when it's harder to see, it's harder to question. And that's the point. Power isn't exercised only through enforcement. It's exercised through design. In the algorithmic age, control isn't imposed. It's engineered. And that's today's Sitrep. Make sure you keep up with Midweek Sitrep on Substack and YouTube for more on this and other topics. You'll find short clips, interviews, and bonus content. And if you want to support the show, check out our merch on everythingisnationalsecurity.com. Every shirt and hat helps keep us independent and growing. I'm Jerry Fowler, and remember, everything is national security. See you next time. Midweek Sitrep with Jerry Fowler is an independent production of OpScent Media Group, LLC. The information provided in this podcast is for general informational purposes only and does not constitute legal, financial, or professional advice. Listeners should consult with a qualified professional before making any decisions based upon the content discussed. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of the host, Jerry Fowler, and any guest, and do not reflect the official policy, position, or endorsement of any current or former employer, client, government agency, military organization, educational institution, or any other entity for which the host, Jerry Fowler, may be affiliated. Mention of a company, product, or service does not constitute an endorsement or recommendation. Any references are provided for informational purposes only. This podcast does not disclose any classified, proprietary, or confidential information. All discussions are based upon publicly available information and personal expertise. Everything's national security. OpScent Media Group, LLC.